Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be sharing my biggest disappointments of 2023. Alright guys, so in today's video, I'm going to be sharing my top 10 least favorite books of 2023 and why these books did not work for me personally. So I try not to post a ton of negative content on my channel, however, I do enjoy doing this video every year just to see how my reading taste has kind of shifted since I've been on BookTube. Also, reading is subjective, so just because these books did not work for me, and I'm going to explain when I talk about each book exactly why they didn't work for me, they might still work for you and you might still really enjoy them. So don't look at this as a list of books that I think everyone will hate. They're just books that personally I did not enjoy. And yeah, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about my biggest disappointments of 2023. And first up, we have Zodiac Academy 8, Sorrow and Starlight. So this is the 8th book in the series, so I don't want to get into spoilers. However, I will say I have not enjoyed this series really since book 6. Both book 7 and book 8 just did not work for me. I feel like this story is being dragged out way longer than it needs to be. And honestly, it feels kind of messy at this point. There's also so many POVs in this book. There is a character that I had no memory of. Like, I was looking through the internet trying to figure out who this person was, and I finally found it out on a Reddit thread. So the fact that I had to do that is kind of upsetting because I loved this series. Like, when I first read this series, before I even started BookTube, or like right when I was getting into BookTube, I was obsessed. I have an entire spoiler-free series review for the first 5 books on my channel. It's one of my earlier videos, but it's gotten so convoluted and there's so many different plot lines, and I do not enjoy it anymore. So I will read the next book because I want to know how everything ends, especially with the cliffhanger ending of this book. However, if they're going to announce even more books after that, I think I will be DNFing the series. They are just such thick books, and like I said, I'm no longer caring as much about the characters as I once was. So this was really upsetting, but I'm really hoping book 9 like knocks it out of the park and is absolutely amazing. And next up, we have A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. So this is the 3rd and final book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. And if you're unfamiliar with that series, it is a YA fantasy romance series set in this whimsical, fantastical world. And we are following Evangeline Fox. So Evangeline Fox is this girl who is in love with her best friend. However, her best friend has just told her that he is actually going to marry her stepsister. So Evangeline is so devastated by this news, she runs to this temple and decides to make a deal with Jax, the Fate of Broken Hearts. Now, it is known in this world you do not make deals with fates. However, Evangeline is so desperate that she does so and agrees to kiss 3 men of Jax's choosing in exchange for him stopping the wedding of her best friend and stepsister. And this story goes from there. The second book in this series, The Ballad of Never After, is perfection. It is angsty, there is longing, and I loved it, which is why I was so excited for this book, and unfortunately, this book really let me down. So I originally rated this 4 stars, and I only deducted a star because there is an additional POV in this book that I just did not like. I thought we were going to get the POV of the love interest, and instead we got the POV of kind of like a villain type character, which normally I love. However, I hated it in this book. I really wanted to have Jax's POV, and we just didn't get that. So that is why I originally deducted a star. However, I then had a live show with my friend Issa, and we realized that this book left so many issues unresolved and open for interpretation, and not in a good way. So there is a curse that is going on throughout the course of this entire series, and at the end, we still have no idea how this curse operates, how it was lifted, and pretty much anything about it. So that was really frustrating. There's also like a lot of symbolism in this book. I don't know why, I just messed that word up. And I thought there was going to be an explanation, like, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but the main character or the love interest is always like throwing an apple up in the air, and I thought there was going to be like some sort of meaning behind that, and we never got anything. There's also some like villainous creatures just running around, no one really cares about them at the end of this book, although they seem to be a huge threat in the previous book. So yeah, there's just a lot of little things like that that I didn't love. So overall, this was a little bit of a letdown for me, but I still had a really good time with the series. And if you are thinking about reading this, I think it is still worth picking up just because book 2 is so fantastic. And next up we have Foxglove by Adalyn Grace, which is the sequel to Belladonna. So I actually gave Foxglove 3 stars. However, I gave Belladonna 5 stars, and it was one of my favorite books of last year. So Foxglove was just not nearly as good in my opinion. So if you're unfamiliar with Belladonna, we are following Signafaro, and when she's just a baby, her mother takes her to this very grand party where everyone ends up being poisoned and passes away. So Death shows up in corporeal form, ready to usher these souls into the afterlife. However, when he touches baby Signa, he realizes that he cannot take her soul, and he becomes kind of intrigued by her. So as she is growing up, Death is following her around, and Signa unfortunately kind of gets a bad reputation in the town because all of her guardians just seem to pass away pretty quickly. So eventually Signa gets word from these distant relations that they would like Signa to come live with them. And when Signa gets there, she realizes that there are some mysteries that need to be uncovered, and she could use Death's help. So, like I said, Belladonna was so good. I loved the romance. It also had those like spooky, autumnal vibes. It was definitely like a gothic fantasy. However, Foxglove, we got a new POV. And I was not a fan. I do not like the direction Foxglove went. I feel like we lost a lot of that gothic charm and overall feeling. And I just didn't like the romance nearly as much. And it just didn't work for me overall. It just felt a little rushed compared to Belladonna, which I just felt like was perfect. So yeah, Foxglove, I did give 3 stars. I think that it is worth reading because the series is not over. I'm kind of hoping the 3rd book makes up for the 2nd book, but we will see. But yeah, overall, Foxglove was just a little bit of a letdown for me. And next up, we have Requiem by Callie Hart. So unfortunately, I did end up rating this 1.5 stars. This book did not work for me at all because it has a specific trope that I absolutely despise with my whole entire being. So this book is following Sorrel, and the beginning of our story, Sorrel is in a car accident where her best friend is killed, and this really popular, attractive guy was like driving the car. So Sorrel decides that she is going to get revenge on this guy by enrolling in the kind of like boarding school he is currently attending, and where she plans to essentially assassinate him and make his life miserable. So all I can say is that is not actually what happens in this book, and I did not like this book at all. I just thought I was going to be reading something, and I ended up reading something completely different, and it didn't work for me. And unfortunately, this is also one of those books where if I was to explain my reasoning, I would be giving away all of the spoilers. So if you want my like exact reasoning, you can DM me on Instagram, and I'll definitely answer. But overall, I was really let down by this book, and it was one of my biggest disappointments of the year. And next up is a fantasy romance. So we have Vicious Bonds by Shonora Williams. So I will say I actually love this author. Wanting Mr. Kane is one of my favorite age gaps. So I think she writes romances really well. Personally, this fantasy romance I just felt like needed a little bit more world building. It just felt kind of one-dimensional. So this was described as a fantasy romance that had been heavily influenced by Peaky Blinders, and I love that show so much. Cillian Murphy is like one of my top favorite actors. I just think he's unbelievably talented. So I was very excited to pick this up, but overall, I don't remember half of this book, which probably isn't good. I just remember that it felt like I needed some more explanation in terms of the magic system, how things worked. I know that these two characters were able to communicate kind of like Rhysand and Farah, like via mind-to-mind, but I didn't feel gripped by this story in any way, and it was just kind of a letdown for me. So this didn't work for me. However, if you're a fan of Peaky Blinders and you want to try out a fantasy romance, maybe give this a try. So this next book, unfortunately, I do not have a star rating because it was a DNF. I actually DNF'd it last week, and it's a novella. So the fact that I DNF'd a novella should kind of tell you how much I was not enjoying this book. It is Tangled and Tinsel, and I know a lot of my friends really loved this book last year. I personally just found the spice unbelievably boring. So it is a wide shoes romance. We were following this girl that gets snowed in with 4 guys that she's worked with that she finds very attractive. However, I hated all of the guys. I just felt like they were very like one-dimensional, very tropey. And I thought the spice was boring. I just like didn't care about it. And I tried picking this back up twice since I DNF'd it, and I couldn't. I just did not enjoy this book. So if you want a why choose kind of office romance a little bit, maybe give this a try. Like I said, a lot of my friends did really enjoy this. Personally, something about the spice and the writing just was not for me. And next up, we have A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows by Renee. So this is the first book in a adult fantasy romance series. I ended up giving this 2.5 stars, and I will explain why. So if you're unfamiliar with the plot of this book, we are following this girl who was born with a birthmark that designated her for having this blood that is very powerful to the Fae. So her mother ended up making a deal with the Queen of the Fae that when her daughter comes of age, she will give her to the Fae Prince, and then our main character will give her blood to the Fae Prince, who will use it to, like, protect the realm. Now, our main character wants nothing to do with the Fae Prince. However, this book starts when she is being taken to the Fae realm and is kind of being introduced to the court, where she meets the prince's brother. And there's a little bit of a love triangle, and things go from there. Now, with this book, I was loving it up until the last 3/4 last half of this book, where it just became spice, but, like, not spice of, like, longing and angst. It just kind of happened out of nowhere, and it happened a lot, really frequently, and I feel like it takes a lot for me to, like, not like spice, and I didn't love it in this book. Now, I will say the second book in this series I did really enjoy, and I gave 4 stars. I think I gave this, like, 2.5 stars. So I still need to read the third book. However, I've had a lot of my friends tell me that they kind of DNF'd the series, so I've been putting it off. But I do plan on eventually finishing it, and I will let you guys know what I think. But yeah, personally, I just didn't love this first book nearly as much as the sequel. And this next book, I apparently rated 1.5 stars. I honestly have very little memory of reading this book. I remember, like, the overall plot, but I was just so underwhelmed. It is House of Lies and Sorrow. This is a fantasy romance. It is very similar to ACOTAR, except there isn't a lot of, like, world building given. It starts out with this girl that finds out that she was just promised to this deadly fae who all of his human wives have died, like, within days of marrying him. And this woman's father ends up, like, losing a bunch of money and it, like, sells his daughter to this fae to get married, where you assume she's probably gonna die. And then you meet the fae, who is essentially, like, a grumpy Rhysand, who is like, yeah, people just keep killing my wives, and I'm trying to stop it, but it has been working out well, so you're probably gonna die. Sorry, but let's try to be vigilant so that doesn't happen. So that's all I really remember from that book, and I was not a fan. But if you're looking for something that is kind of similar to ACOTAR, maybe give it a shot. I have heard that the other books in the series, it does get better. I just have no interest in trying to see if that actually is true or not. And next up we have That Sick Love by Jessie Hall. So I did rate this 3.5 stars. However, before I picked this up, I was positive I was gonna adore this book. And I think it more has to do with the fact that I read this right after I read Hollow Heathens, that has a very similar vibe and overall feeling. And I just liked Hollow Heathens way more. So anyway, That Sick Love is following this girl that lives in this, like, very religious kind of community. And the higher-ups in this community don't like that she has a little bit of power, so they hire this person to kill her, and it ends up being this stalker who ends up kind of, like, falling in love with her as he's stalking her, and he has his own trauma that he's, like, dealing with, and it's very, very dark. I just did not feel connected. So I found myself very bored while I was listening to this. I just didn't care about either character. I also think I've read some really good stalker romances, like the Cat and Mouse duet, where I loved the hero, and this hero, I didn't like him that much. I thought he was okay. I also didn't love the, like, main character we were following, and it was also a very, very long book. I don't remember how many pages. I just remember it took me like 4 or 5 days to read it, and I'm normally a pretty quick reader. So yeah, I didn't love this. However, if you are looking for, like, a dark stalker vibe type book, a lot of people love That Sick Love, so definitely give it a shot. And this last book is actually a very popular romance, so a lot of you are probably not gonna like me for this. It is Flawless by Elsie Silver. I gave it 2.75 stars. However, when I first finished that book, I thought I was never gonna pick up another cowboy romance. It really turned me off, but then I picked up Heartless. And that was 5 stars and was one of my top books of the year. And I think the rest of the series I ended up rating 4 stars. So I loved the Chestnut Spring series overall. Flawless just did not work out for me. And it's mostly because I didn't like the hero. I just felt like he gave off kind of like bro energy. and I wasn't particularly interested in like the whole cowboy part of the story. However, in the rest of the series, I loved it. So for some reason, Flawless was just not for me. However, I do think that the Chestnut Spring series is 100% worth reading. Like I said, Heartless is fantastic. I'm going to talk about it in my top books of the year video. It is single dad, age gap, nanny, and it's so good. But yeah, Flawless was just not for me. All right, guys, those were my biggest disappointments of 2023. And like I said before, reading is subjective, so no hate towards these books or these authors. These are just books that did not work for me personally. And if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.